Seeing others with compassionate eyes. Have you ever tried looking at a stranger as if they were your own family? Think about that for a moment. Imagine you're walking down the street and you catch someone's eyes, someone you don't know, someone who might look busy, tired, maybe even a little irritated. Now imagine shifting your perspective and seeing that person the way you would look at a beloved brother, a sister, a parent, or even a child. Doesn't the whole energy of the moment soften? This is not just poetic imagination. It's a practice deeply rooted in the teachings of the Buddha. He encouraged us to see beyond appearances and to recognize a profound truth. Every person we meet has, in some way, been close to us before. Across lifetimes, they may have been our mother, our father, our friend. And when we hold this view, something magical happens. The harsh edge of judgment gives way to tenderness. Think of the last time someone snapped at you in traffic, or when a colleague spoke harshly without reason. Our first instinct is often to defend, to push back, or at least to silently label them as rude. But what if we paused and looked deeper? What if we reminded ourselves, this person is suffering. This anger I see is not their essence. It's a wound, a cry for help, a reflection of pain they may not know how to express. Suddenly, instead of meeting hostility with hostility, we create a space for compassion to arise. I remember an afternoon when I was waiting in line at a grocery store. The cashier was clearly overwhelmed, moving quickly but looking frustrated, and she accidentally overcharged a customer in front of me. The customer grew angry, raising their voice, and the cashier's face turned red. Everyone around seemed uncomfortable. When it was finally my turn, I had a choice, to let her tension infect me, or to soften my gaze and treat her with kindness. I looked at her the way I would look at my younger sister, stressed, tired, but trying her best. I smiled gently, spoke slowly, and told her, "It's okay, take your time." In that moment, I saw her shoulders relax, and her eyes filled with relief. What changed? Nothing in the outside situation. The only shift was in the way I chose to see her, with eyes of compassion rather than judgment. This small story reminds me of what the Buddha taught. Our perception shapes our world. If we see others only through the lens of their mistakes, their anger, or their flaws, then the world appears harsh, cold, and divided. But if we choose to see them with compassionate eyes, suddenly the world softens. Every encounter becomes a chance to connect, to heal, and to practice love. You might be thinking, but isn't that naive? What about people who are genuinely hurtful or cruel? It's a valid concern. Compassion doesn't mean we ignore harmful behavior or allow ourselves to be mistreated. Boundaries are important. But even while setting clear limits, we can still hold compassion in our heart. To see someone suffering is not the same as excusing their actions. It's recognizing that behind every unkind word, every act of anger, there is a human being who is also struggling. And when we recognize that, our response carries a different energy, less bitterness, more understanding. Here's a practice you can try the next time you encounter someone difficult. Pause for just one breath and silently say to yourself, this person, too, wants to be happy. This person, too, is struggling with their own pain. That single thought can shift the energy of the entire interaction. It doesn't make the problem vanish, but it prevents your heart from hardening. And isn't that what we truly long for? To live with a heart that is open, not closed. To move through life without constantly carrying the weight of judgment, irritation, or resentment. Compassionate eyes give us that freedom. Science today even supports this ancient wisdom. Studies in neuroscience show that when we practice compassion meditation, when we visualize others with kindness and empathy, our brains literally change. Regions associated with empathy and emotional regulation grow stronger. Compassion is not just a spiritual idea. It's a real, trainable skill that reshapes our nervous system and our daily lives. So imagine walking through your day as if you were wearing a new pair of glasses, not tinted by fear or judgment, but by compassion. You see your colleague not as the one who always interrupts, but as someone longing for validation. You see the stranger on the subway not as the person taking up too much space, but as someone exhausted from a sleepless night. You even see the family member who frustrates you not as the one who never understands, but as someone who, just like you, is trying their best with the tools they have. I won't pretend this is easy. The mind loves to judge. It finds comfort in labels. But every time we soften our gaze, we are training a new habit, one that doesn't just benefit the person we are looking at, but also frees us. Because judgment is heavy. Anger is heavy. Compassion is light. So let me ask you, How do you want to walk through the world today? With the heaviness of criticism or the lightness of compassion? Which one will give you peace when you lay your head down at night? The Buddha offered us this path not as a theory, but as a practice. You don't need to believe in past lives or cosmic family ties to experience its truth. Just try it today. Look at one stranger as if they were your brother, your sister, your child. Notice how your heart shifts. Notice how the encounter changes. That is the power of seeing with compassionate eyes. And here's something beautiful. The more we practice, the more natural it becomes. At first, it may feel like effort, like putting on a mask. But soon, it becomes second nature. Compassion becomes our default lens, and suddenly life feels different, more connected, more alive, more human. So I invite you, today, practice this simple yet profound shift. When you look at someone, anyone, ask yourself, what if this person were my family? What if this person had once cared for me, loved me, held me? Let your eyes reflect that thought. You may be surprised by the transformation, both in them and in yourself. And as we close today's reflection, I want to leave you with this. Seeing with compassionate eyes is just the beginning. Tomorrow, we'll take this practice one step further, not only softening our gaze, but also embodying compassion through something as simple, yet as powerful, as a smile. Because sometimes, the soft light in our eyes becomes the gentle curve of our lips, and that single smile can be the spark that heals another person's day. The smile of compassion. They say a smile is universal. No matter where you travel, what language you speak, or what culture you come from, a genuine smile needs no translation. But here's something deeper to consider. A smile that comes from compassion isn't just a gesture, it's medicine. Have you ever experienced that? A moment when you were carrying a heavy burden, feeling tired, maybe even on the verge of tears, and then someone, perhaps even a stranger, looked at you and smiled with kindness? It doesn't fix everything, but it does something powerful. It softens the weight. It reminds you that you're not invisible. It tells your heart, you are seen, you are cared for, even if just for this brief moment. This is what I want to talk about today, the smile of compassion. Now, let's be honest. Not all smiles carry the same energy. Some are polite, some are fake, some are just part of social etiquette. You know the kind I mean, the smile you put on when someone says, "How are you?" and you don't really want to answer. That's not the smile I'm talking about. The Buddha once said that a compassionate smile is a reflection of awakening. Why? Because it comes from a place of genuine presence. It's not about showing teeth or performing courtesy. It's about transmitting peace. Think about it. When you smile with compassion, it's as if your heart is saying, "May you be well. May you find ease." That intention, even unspoken, is felt. People may not consciously register it, but their nervous system does. Scientists today talk about mirror neurons, how we pick up the emotions of those around us almost instantly. A tense face makes us tense. A soft, compassionate smile makes us soften in return. It's as if your smile is not just on your lips, it's a wave of energy that touches the other person. I once met a man at a hospital waiting room. His child was inside undergoing surgery. He looked exhausted, worried, and lost in thought. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't pretend to know his pain. But when our eyes met, I offered him a gentle smile. Not a big, forced grin. Just a quiet smile from the heart, as if to say, "I see you. You're not alone." His eyes softened, and for a moment, the fear in his face eased. Later, he told me, that smile, it was like someone reminding me to breathe again. A smile of compassion does that. It gives people permission to breathe. And it's not only for others. Sometimes, the one who most needs your compassionate smile is you. Let me ask you, when was the last time you looked at yourself in the mirror, not to judge, not to criticize, but to smile kindly? Most of us look at our reflection and immediately see what's wrong. I look tired. I've gained weight. I'm getting older. But what if, instead, you looked and smiled the way you would at a dear friend? What if you said silently, "You've been through a lot, but I love you anyway"? Try it sometime. It may feel awkward at first, even silly. But little by little, that compassionate smile toward yourself starts to heal the cracks inside. You learn to befriend yourself instead of battling yourself. And when you smile at yourself with kindness, it becomes easier to smile at the world in the same way. There's another beautiful dimension to this practice. When we smile from compassion, we are actually planting seeds. A seed of peace in the other person, and a seed of joy in ourselves. The Buddha taught that every act of compassion, no matter how small, ripples outward. Imagine if every day, you gave just one smile that came from your heart. That's 365 seeds a year. Over time, those seeds blossom into a garden, not just in your life, but in the lives of those you touch. And yet, the smile of compassion is not about pretending life is always happy. In fact, it's the opposite. It's smiling with awareness of suffering. When Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen master, was asked why he often smiled while talking about difficult topics like war, grief, or loss, he answered, "Because I know there is suffering. But I also know there is peace available in the present moment." That's the essence of a compassionate smile. It doesn't deny pain. It acknowledges pain and chooses to bring light into it. So maybe the question for us is this: are we willing to let our smile become an offering, not just a reflex? Can we practice smiling not because everything is perfect, but because our smile itself might make things a little lighter for someone else? Let's try a small exercise right now. Take a deep breath. Think of someone you love, perhaps a child, a close friend, or even a pet. Notice how your heart softens when you imagine them. Now let a gentle smile form on your lips, one that carries that feeling of warmth. Hold it for a few breaths. That's the energy we are talking about. It's real, and you can carry it into your interactions. I know some of you might be thinking, but I'm not the smiling type. That's okay. This isn't about forcing yourself to become cheerful or fake. Compassionate smiling is less about expression and more about intention. It's about the heart behind the smile. Even a subtle, quiet smile can be powerful if it's born from genuine care. And here's something worth remembering: compassion is contagious. Just as anger spreads, so does kindness. I've seen it happen in meetings, in families, even among strangers in a cafe. One compassionate smile shifts the mood, and suddenly others soften too. You never know whose day you might change by offering it. So as you move through your day, consider this. What would it look like to use your smile as a gift? Not a performance, not an obligation, but a silent blessing. May you be well. May you find ease. Those messages can ride on your smile without a single word. And remember, this is not about ignoring the deeper layers of compassion. A smile is just the beginning. As we'll see next time, true compassion isn't only shown on the face, it lives in the way we speak, the way we listen, the way we respond. But for today, I invite you to practice this. Smile at one person with genuine compassion. Smile at yourself in the mirror. Smile at a stranger without expectation. Watch how it shifts the energy. Because a compassionate smile, even the smallest one, can truly be medicine for a weary heart. And perhaps, it can be the medicine the world needs a little more of right now. So let us carry this smile with us. And tomorrow, we'll go deeper, exploring how compassion doesn't only shine through our eyes and our smile, but also flows through our words. Words that can heal, words that can comfort, words that, like a smile, can become a blessing. Compassionate speech. Do you remember the last time someone spoke a kind word to you? Not a casual "Hey, how are you?" or a polite "Have a nice day," but a word that truly reached into your heart? Maybe it was something as simple as, "I believe in you," or "You're not alone." Think about how that felt. Didn't it lift the weight of the day, even if only for a moment? Words matter more than we realize. A gentle word can rescue a day that feels unbearable. A harsh word, on the other hand, can wound us for years. The Buddha once said that words can be like honey, sweet, nourishing, and healing for the soul. When we practice compassion, our speech becomes more than communication. It becomes a gift, a seed of peace planted in someone else's heart. I often think about how many words we speak in a day. Thousands. Most of them disappear into the air, forgotten. But once in a while, a single sentence stays with someone forever. Maybe it's the encouragement that pushes them forward when they want to give up. Maybe it's the comfort that helps them endure grief. Or maybe it's the apology that finally heals an old wound. Our words have power far beyond what we imagine. Let me share a story. A friend of mine once told me about a moment in high school when he was struggling quietly with depression. He felt invisible, like no one noticed his pain. One day, a teacher stopped him in the hallway, looked him in the eyes, and said, "You have a good heart. Don't forget that." That single sentence stayed with him through years of hardship. Decades later, he still remembers it. Think about that. One sentence, spoken in compassion, became a light that guided him through the darkness. And yet, so often we use words carelessly. We rush, we vent, we criticize without thinking. I've been guilty of it too. In moments of stress, it's easy to snap or to speak without care. But each time we do, we are scattering seeds as well, seeds of anger, seeds of hurt. Once planted, they grow, sometimes in ways we never intended. So here's a question for reflection. If every word you spoke today became a seed in someone else's heart, what kind of garden would you be planting? Would it be filled with trust, peace, and encouragement? Or would it be overrun with resentment, fear, and doubt? Compassionate speech doesn't mean sugarcoating the truth. It doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means speaking truth with kindness. It means pausing long enough to ask, will my words heal or harm? Will they deepen the wound or help it close? There's a Buddhist practice called right speech. It's simple, but profound. Before speaking, we ask ourselves 4 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? Imagine how much suffering could be prevented if we paused for just a second to consider those 4 things. I once tried this practice during an argument with someone I love. My instinct was to defend myself sharply, to throw words like weapons. But I paused and asked, is what I'm about to say true? Is it kind? Will it help? The answer was no. So I took a breath instead. And though it didn't solve everything immediately, it kept the situation from turning into a storm. Sometimes compassionate speech isn't about what you say, it's about what you choose not to say. And here's another layer to it. Compassionate speech isn't only for others. It's for ourselves too. Have you noticed the way you talk to yourself inside your own mind? Many of us carry an inner critic that speaks harsher than anyone else ever could. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. You're failing. If we spoke to our friends the way we often speak to ourselves, we wouldn't have many friends left. But when we bring compassion into our inner dialogue, we transform. Instead of saying, I'm messed up again, we can say, I'm learning. I'm trying. I'm human. This shift is not indulgence, it's healing. Because how we speak to ourselves determines how we show up for others. If our inner garden is full of thorns, we'll inevitably share them. If it's full of compassion, we'll share that too. Science even backs this up. Psychologists have found that positive affirmations and compassionate self-talk reduce stress, improve resilience, and even support physical health. It's not just spiritual, it's deeply human, deeply practical. So how do we begin? Start small. Offer one kind word today, to a colleague, to your partner, to a stranger, or to yourself. Say thank you with sincerity. Tell someone, I appreciate you. Leave a note for a friend, I'm proud of you. It may feel small to you, but you never know how much it might mean to them. And when you catch yourself about to speak words of irritation, pause. Take one breath. Ask, do I really need to say this? Is there a kinder way to express it? Over time, this pause becomes a habit, and your speech becomes a source of healing instead of harm. I'd like to invite you to reflect. Whose day could you change with a single compassionate word? Maybe it's someone close to you. Maybe it's someone you hardly know. And here's the beautiful part. You may never even realize the impact you had. But that's okay. Compassion doesn't need recognition. It simply flows, like water nourishing roots underground, unseen but essential. So let's remember, every word carries weight. Every word plants a seed. We have the power, every day, to choose what kind of seeds we scatter into the world. Let them be seeds of kindness, of understanding, of love. Because words, once spoken, can echo far beyond the moment. And as we close today, I want to leave you with this thought. Compassion isn't only about speaking, it's also about listening. To truly offer compassionate words, we must first learn to hear the pain, the joy, and the longing in others. Tomorrow, we'll explore this deeper dimension, the art of listening with compassion. Because sometimes, the most healing words are no words at all, but the gift of silence and presence. Compassionate speech. Do you remember the last time someone spoke a kind word to you? Not a casual, hey, how are you? Or a polite, have a nice day, but a word that truly reached into your heart? Maybe it was something as simple as, I believe in you, or you're not alone. Think about how that felt. Didn't it lift the weight of the day, even if only for a moment? Words matter more than we realize. A gentle word can rescue a day that feels unbearable. A harsh word, on the other hand, can wound us for years. The Buddha once said that words can be like honey, sweet, nourishing, and healing for the soul. When we practice compassion, our speech becomes more than communication. It becomes a gift, a seed of peace planted in someone else's heart. I often think about how many words we speak in a day. Thousands. Most of them disappear into the air, forgotten. But once in a while, a single sentence stays with someone forever. Maybe it's the encouragement that pushes them forward when they want to give up. Maybe it's the comfort that helps them endure grief. Or maybe it's the apology that finally heals an old wound. Our words have power far beyond what we imagine. Let me share a story. A friend of mine once told me about a moment in high school when he was struggling quietly with depression. He felt invisible, like no one noticed his pain. One day, a teacher stopped him in the hallway, looked him in the eyes, and said, "You have a good heart. Don't forget that." That single sentence stayed with him through years of hardship. Decades later, he still remembers it. Think about that. One sentence, spoken in compassion, became a light that guided him through the darkness. And yet, so often we use words carelessly. We rush, we vent, we criticize without thinking. I've been guilty of it too. In moments of stress, it's easy to snap or to speak without care. But each time we do, we are scattering seeds as well. Seeds of anger, seeds of hurt. Once planted, they grow, sometimes in ways we never intended. So here's a question for reflection. If every word you spoke today became a seed in someone else's heart, what kind of garden would you be planting? Would it be filled with trust, peace, and encouragement? Or would it be overrun with resentment, fear, and doubt? Compassionate speech doesn't mean sugarcoating the truth. It doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. It means speaking truth with kindness. It means pausing long enough to ask, will my words heal or harm? Will they deepen the wound or help it close? There's a Buddhist practice called right speech. It's simple, but profound. Before speaking, we ask ourselves 4 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it the right time? Imagine how much suffering could be prevented if we paused for just a second to consider those 4 things. I once tried this practice during an argument with someone I love. My instinct was to defend myself sharply, to throw words like weapons. But I paused and asked, is what I'm about to say true? Is it kind? Will it help? The answer was no. So I took a breath instead. And though it didn't solve everything immediately, it kept the situation from turning into a storm. Sometimes compassionate speech isn't about what you say, it's about what you choose not to say. And here's another layer to it. Compassionate speech isn't only for others. It's for ourselves too. Have you noticed the way you talk to yourself inside your own mind? Many of us carry an inner critic that speaks harsher than anyone else ever could. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. You're failing. If we spoke to our friends the way we often speak to ourselves, we wouldn't have many friends left. But when we bring compassion into our inner dialogue, we transform. Instead of saying, "I'm messed up again," we can say, "I'm learning. I'm trying. I'm human." This shift is not indulgence, it's healing. Because how we speak to ourselves determines how we show up for others. If our inner garden is full of thorns, we'll inevitably share them. If it's full of compassion, we'll share that too. Science even backs this up. Psychologists have found that positive affirmations and compassionate self-talk reduce stress, improve resilience, and even support physical health. It's not just spiritual, it's deeply human, deeply practical. So how do we begin? Start small. Offer one kind word today, to a colleague, to your partner, to a stranger, or to yourself. Say thank you with sincerity. Tell someone, "I appreciate you." Leave a note for a friend, "I'm proud of you." It may feel small to you, but you never know how much it might mean to them. And when you catch yourself about to speak words of irritation, pause. Take one breath. Ask, do I really need to say this? Is there a kinder way to express it? Over time, this pause becomes a habit, and your speech becomes a source of healing instead of harm. I'd like to invite you to reflect. Whose day could you change with a single compassionate word? Maybe it's someone close to you. Maybe it's someone you hardly know. And here's the beautiful part. You may never even realize the impact you had. But that's okay. Compassion doesn't need recognition. It simply flows, like water nourishing roots underground, unseen but essential. So let's remember, every word carries weight. Every word plants a seed. We have the power, every day, to choose what kind of seeds we scatter into the world. Let them be seeds of kindness, of understanding, of love. Because words, once spoken, can echo far beyond the moment. And as we close today, I want to leave you with this thought. Compassion isn't only about speaking, it's also about listening. To truly offer compassionate words, we must first learn to hear the pain, the joy, and the longing in others. Tomorrow, we'll explore this deeper dimension, the art of listening with compassion. Because sometimes, the most healing words are no words at all, but the gift of silence and presence. Recognizing suffering to awaken compassion. Let me ask you something. If you truly knew what another person has been through, would you still judge them the same way? Think about it. The driver who cuts you off in traffic, the coworker who snaps at you, the stranger who seems rude at the store. Our first reaction is often irritation, even anger. But what if, beneath that harsh behavior, there's a story? What if that driver just lost a loved one? What if that coworker is battling loneliness? What if that stranger is carrying invisible grief that's too heavy to name? Buddhist teachings put it simply, to understand is to love. Understanding is the seed of compassion. Without it, compassion remains an idea, beautiful, but abstract. With it, compassion becomes alive, practical, and transformative. I remember once standing in line at a cafe. The barista was unusually short-tempered, rolling her eyes at customers. I could feel the irritation rising in me. Why is she being so rude? But then, almost instinctively, I paused and thought, she must be going through something. Later, as I picked up my coffee, I overheard her quietly apologizing to a coworker. She'd been up all night at the hospital with her sick child. In that moment, my frustration dissolved into something else, tenderness. Because when you see the pain, you can't help but soften. And isn't that true for all of us? When someone lashes out, it's rarely because life is easy. Anger, rudeness, even cruelty, they're often masks that suffering wears. And the moment we remember that, our hearts begin to shift. Compassion doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior. It doesn't mean tolerating abuse or ignoring boundaries. It means seeing the human beneath the behavior. It means asking, what wound might this person be carrying? Instead of, what's wrong with them? That small change in perspective can transform conflict into connection. Imagine if, in every heated moment, we could pause and silently ask ourselves, what pain is hiding here? How different would our relationships look? How different would the world look? Psychologists say that most of us operate like icebergs. People only see the tip, our words, our actions, our attitudes. But underneath, hidden from view, lies everything that shapes us: childhood experiences, heartbreaks, failures, losses, fears. When we recognize that hidden layer, judgment gives way to empathy. Buddhist practice calls this Quan Kyu, looking deeply. To look beyond appearances. To see the whole picture. And when you practice this, something almost magical happens. Your anger loses its grip. Because anger thrives on a narrow view. When you expand that view to include someone suffering, anger softens into understanding. I've found this in my own life. There was a person I once worked with who constantly criticized me. At first, I felt defensive, even resentful. But over time, I learned about his life, a past filled with rejection and feeling invisible. His harshness wasn't really about me. It was his way of protecting himself. Knowing that didn't excuse the behavior, but it allowed me to respond with more patience, less bitterness. And maybe you've experienced this too. Maybe someone you once disliked became more human to you after you learned their story. That shift, that's compassion being born. Here's something worth reflecting on. Compassion is not pity. Pity looks down on others. Compassion looks across, heart to heart. It's not about saying, poor you. It's about saying, I see your pain. And in some way, I've known pain too. Compassion reminds us that suffering is the thread that connects all human beings. So how do we bring this into daily life? First, practice pausing. Before reacting to someone's negativity, take one breath and remind yourself, this person has a story I don't know. Second, try imaginative empathy. Ask yourself, what might have happened in their life to make them act this way? Even if you don't know for sure, this exercise shifts your perspective. Third, remember your own suffering. Think about the times you weren't at your best because you were hurting. Let that memory guide you to be gentler with others. Over time, this practice reshapes the way you see the world. Strangers stop being difficult people and become fellow travelers carrying heavy loads. Your anger softens, your patience grows, and your heart begins to offer something precious, kindness without condition. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you see suffering clearly, you don't become weighed down by it, you become freer. Because your heart no longer wastes energy clinging to resentment. Instead, it channels that energy into understanding. Science even supports this. Studies in compassion-focused therapy show that when people intentionally imagine the suffering of others, their brains activate regions linked to caregiving and empathy. Not only does this improve relationships, it also reduces stress in the person practicing it. Compassion, it turns out, heals both the giver and the receiver. So let me ask you again, if you truly knew what another person has been through, would you still judge them the same way? Maybe the answer is no. Maybe the answer is, I would still hold boundaries, but I would hold them with love. Maybe the answer is, I would still disagree, but without the poison of resentment. That shift makes all the difference. The Buddha once said, hatred never ends through hatred. Only through love does hatred end. And the doorway to love is understanding. Understanding is what melts the walls between us. Understanding is what turns judgment into compassion. And once we see the suffering, the next step becomes clear. We can begin to send healing energy, not in some mystical sense, but in the simple ways available to us every day. A kind word, a gentle presence, a silent prayer that says, may you find peace. So the practice is this: look deeply. Recognize the hidden pain. And let that recognition be the spark that lights the flame of compassion in your heart. Because when we see suffering clearly, we don't turn away, we lean in. And in leaning in, we discover something profound. Compassion is not just what we give to others. It's what frees us too. And tomorrow, we'll explore the next step together. Once we've recognized suffering, how can we actively send loving energy to those who need it most? Sending compassionate energy. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that a single kind thought could actually ease someone's suffering, even if they're miles away? It might sound a little mystical at first. After all, we are taught that actions speak louder than words, and words speak louder than thoughts. But in Buddhist practice, there's a quiet power that begins long before words or actions, a power born in the heart, carried by intention. In compassion meditation, there's a phrase often repeated, may you be free from suffering. May you find peace. Sometimes it's directed to a loved one. Sometimes to a stranger. Sometimes even to ourselves. It's not about magic. It's about cultivating a state of mind so filled with goodwill that it naturally radiates outward. Think about it this way. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the mood? No one had to say anything. You just knew. If someone is filled with anger, the air feels tense. If someone is overflowing with joy, it feels lighter, easier to breathe. That's energy. It's not visible, but we all feel it. Compassion works the same way. When we generate kind intentions, we become transmitters of calm, warmth, and healing. I remember sitting on a train once, watching a young man argue on the phone. His face was tight with frustration, his voice sharp. I didn't know what his struggle was, but something in me softened. Silently, I repeated, may you be free from this burden. May you find peace. He never knew I was doing it, of course. But you know what happened? My own frustration dissolved. And when he finally hung up, his body seemed to ease a little too. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe not. But I felt in that moment that compassion does ripple outward, even in ways we don't see. Modern science backs this up in surprising ways. Studies on loving-kindness meditation show that regularly sending thoughts of goodwill not only reduces stress for the practitioner, but also improves how others feel around them. People become more patient, more generous, more connected. It's as if compassion rewires not just our minds, but the invisible web between us. And isn't that beautiful? To realize that you don't need wealth, power, or influence to help someone. You don't even need to be physically near them. You only need a willing heart. A simple thought, may you be well. That's it. That's enough to begin. But let's be clear, sending compassionate energy isn't about pretending to fix everything. It doesn't erase someone's pain. What it does is create a field of kindness that supports healing. Imagine a candle in a dark room. It doesn't end the night, but it changes the space. It makes the darkness softer, more bearable. That's what compassion does. It softens the weight of suffering. The Buddha once said that the mind is boundless, like the sky. Compassion, too, knows no boundaries. It doesn't stop at your doorstep. It doesn't fade across miles. It doesn't care about time zones or timelines. Whether someone is near or far, alive or gone, you can still send them compassion. That intention ripples in ways we may never fully understand. Here's a simple practice you might try tonight. Sit quietly for a few moments, close your eyes, and bring to mind someone you care about. Breathe in slowly, and as you breathe out, silently repeat, "May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering." Notice how your body feels as you do this. Then, if you're ready, expand it further. Think of a stranger, maybe someone you passed on the street today. Send the same silent wish. Finally, if you're brave enough, think of someone you struggle with, someone you dislike, and whisper to them in your mind, "May you also be free from suffering." That last part is the hardest, because compassion is easy when it's directed toward people we love. It's easy when it's a friend, a child, a parent. But what about those who hurt us? What about those who test our patience? Can we send them kindness too? That's where real transformation begins. Because compassion that excludes is still limited. Compassion that includes, even those we don't like, becomes boundless. It frees us. Not necessarily them, but us. It loosens the knots of bitterness in our own hearts. I'll admit, I've struggled with this myself. There was someone in my life who caused me deep pain. For a long time, the idea of wishing them well felt impossible. But I learned something surprising. I didn't have to forgive everything they did. I didn't have to let them back into my life. What I could do was simply acknowledge their suffering and wish for it to ease. Because a person who causes harm is almost always carrying harm inside. And if their suffering lessens, maybe their harm toward others will too. This is where compassion becomes revolutionary. It's not just about being nice. It's about breaking cycles. It's about refusing to add more anger into a world already full of it. Instead, we plant seeds of peace, even in the soil of conflict. So let me ask you again, do you believe that a single kind thought can ease someone's suffering? Maybe the answer is yes. Maybe the answer is, I've felt it in my own life. Maybe the answer is, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. Because even the attempt transforms us. The world is noisy, divided, often harsh. But in the quiet of your own heart, you have the power to send something different into it. A whisper of peace, a pulse of kindness, a breath of compassion. That energy, multiplied across many hearts, could reshape the world. So tonight, try it. Think of someone, anyone, and silently wish them well. Don't overthink it. Just send the thought. Because you never know, in that very moment, they might be carrying a heavy burden. And maybe, just maybe, your compassion lightens it. And tomorrow, we'll take this practice one step further. How do we extend compassion not just to those we love, or even those far away, but to the people we find most difficult, the ones we'd rather turn away from? Compassion for those who are hard to love. Let me start with a difficult question. Is it really possible to feel compassion for someone who has hurt us? For most of us, the answer that rises instantly is no. Our natural instinct is to protect, to build walls, to push away those who've caused us pain. And that's understandable. Our wounds are real. But here's the paradox the Buddha pointed to. Those who hurt us can actually become our greatest teachers in compassion. Why? Because it's easy to love the people who are kind to us. It's effortless to show compassion when we are treated with respect, warmth, and care. But what about when we face cruelty, betrayal, or indifference? That's where compassion reveals its true depth. The Buddha taught that those who cause harm are often carrying deep suffering of their own. Anger, jealousy, violence, these are signs of inner wounds. A person who lashes out is usually, in some way, a victim of pain themselves. When we learn to see this, our perspective shifts. Instead of asking, why did they hurt me? We begin to wonder, what pain must they be carrying to act this way? I'll give you an example. There was someone in my life who treated me unfairly, constantly criticizing me in ways that felt personal. For a long time, I carried resentment. But then one day, I learned a piece of their story. They had grown up in a home where nothing was ever enough, where love was always conditional. Suddenly, Their harshness made sense, not excusable, but understandable. My anger softened. I could see that behind their sharp words was an old wound, unhealed. This doesn't mean forgiving someone is easy. It doesn't mean we have to accept their harmful behavior or invite them back into our lives. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about releasing ourselves from the chains of bitterness. Because resentment is heavy, it weighs us down far more than it punishes the other person. Think of it like carrying a hot coal in your hand, waiting for the chance to throw it at the one who wronged you. Who suffers more in the meantime? You. Letting go doesn't mean pretending the fire never burned you. It means you choose to put the coal down so you stop burning yourself. Compassion for those who hurt us is not about approval. It's about freedom. Freedom from anger, freedom from hate, freedom from the cycle of hurt. When we practice compassion in these moments, we begin to heal not just ourselves, but also the collective energy of suffering that moves through the world. Psychologists today even echo this ancient wisdom. Research shows that practicing compassion and forgiveness lowers stress, improves mental health, and even strengthens the immune system. Holding on to resentment, on the other hand, is linked to anxiety, depression, and physical illness. The body keeps score. The heart remembers. But compassion rewrites the story. Let's pause for a moment. Think of someone who has hurt you. Don't push the memory away. Just bring it gently to mind. Now ask yourself, if I could see their suffering, what might it look like? What loneliness? What fear? What pain might they be carrying? Notice how this simple question softens the edge of anger. Of course, compassion doesn't mean we stop setting boundaries. Sometimes the most compassionate act is distance, choosing not to allow someone's pain to spill into our lives anymore. But even in that distance, we can wish them healing. We can release the grip of hatred in our own hearts. I once heard a monk say, "Forgiveness is not a gift we give the other person. It's a gift we give ourselves." That has stayed with me, because when we forgive, we aren't denying the harm done. We are simply saying, "I refuse to let this pain define me any longer." That is powerful. That is liberation. But here's something important. Compassion doesn't just extend outward. To be whole, it must also turn inward. Many of us are willing to forgive others but remain merciless toward ourselves. We replay our mistakes, criticize our flaws, and hold grudges against our own hearts. Yet the Buddha reminded us, no one deserves your compassion more than you do. When we practice compassion toward ourselves, we break the cycle of self-punishment. We begin to see that just like others, we too are imperfect beings doing the best we can with the pain we carry. So perhaps the deepest practice is this. Can you extend to yourself the same compassion you're learning to extend to others, even those who hurt you? Can you hold your own wounds with gentleness instead of judgment? Because here's the truth. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is strength. To face suffering, our own and others, without running, without hardening, without retaliating, that takes immense courage. Compassion is a warrior's path. So let me ask again, is it possible to love the ones who have hurt us? Maybe not in the way we usually think of love. But it is possible to see their suffering. It is possible to wish them freedom from pain. And in doing so, we free ourselves. This is the work of the heart. It's not fast. It's not easy. But step by step, moment by moment, we can loosen the knots of anger and plant seeds of peace instead. And here's where our journey continues. Once we learn to extend compassion even to those who have wronged us, the question becomes, can we extend it to ourselves? Because a heart that knows compassion inwardly shines compassion outwardly even brighter. So in the next step, we'll explore how to embrace ourselves with the same kindness we are learning to give to the world. Compassion toward ourselves. Let me ask you something personal. Are you harsher on yourself than you are on anyone else? Most of us are. We can forgive a friend for being late. We can give grace to a stranger for snapping at us. But when it comes to our own mistakes, we replay them endlessly. We criticize ourselves in ways we would never speak to another human being. It's almost as if we carry two voices inside us. One is tender, the other is a relentless judge. And for many of us, the judge shouts louder. But here's the truth. Compassion begins at home. It begins in the quiet, often hidden, relationship we have with ourselves. If we cannot treat ourselves with kindness, how can we truly extend kindness to the world? Think about it. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to genuinely care for others when you're stuck in self-hatred or guilt? It's like trying to pour water from an empty cup. Self-compassion fills the cup, so there's something real to offer. The Buddha once said, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." And yet, how many of us live as if that were true? I remember a time in my own life when I had made a choice I regretted deeply. It wasn't catastrophic, but it weighed heavily on me. No matter how much I tried to move forward, I kept dragging myself back into that moment. Why did you do that? How could you? My inner critic was merciless. And then, a teacher of mine asked me something that stopped me cold. If your best friend had made that mistake, would you treat them the way you're treating yourself right now? Of course not. I would have comforted them, reminded them they're human, that mistakes don't define a person. So why couldn't I offer myself the same grace? That was the beginning of learning that compassion for others cannot bypass compassion for self. To be compassionate with ourselves is not self-indulgence. It is not weakness. It is the foundation of every act of love we can give the world. Let's take an example. Imagine you've had a long day. You messed up a project at work. You snapped at someone you care about. By the end of the night, you're lying in bed, replaying everything. Your chest feels heavy, your mind restless. What usually happens in those moments? You tighten, you spiral, you punish yourself. But what if, instead, you paused, placed a hand on your heart, and whispered, "It's okay. You're human. You're learning. You deserve kindness too." Can you feel how different that energy is? One path deepens the wound, the other begins to heal it. Psychologists today call this self-compassion, and research shows it reduces anxiety, builds resilience, and even improves our ability to connect with others. People who are kinder to themselves aren't selfish. They're actually more generous, because they aren't constantly consumed by shame or self-criticism. And yet, many of us resist this. We fear that if we are kind to ourselves, we'll become lazy or complacent. If I don't beat myself up, how will I ever improve? But studies show the opposite. People who practice self-compassion are actually more motivated to grow. Why? Because their growth is fueled by love, not fear. They want to do better because they care, not because they're terrified of failing again. So what does compassion for ourselves look like in practice? Sometimes, it's as simple as rest. Allowing your body to sleep when it's tired instead of forcing it through another late night of work. Sometimes, it's forgiving yourself for a mistake and asking, "What can I learn here?" instead of "What's wrong with me?" Sometimes, it's speaking to yourself gently, using words you would use with someone you adore. And sometimes, it's just placing your hand on your chest in a moment of pain and breathing, letting yourself be human. I want to share an image that helps me. Imagine holding a crying child. You wouldn't scold the child, telling them they're weak for crying. You'd hold them, rock them, soothe them. That child is inside you too. Self-compassion is learning to hold your own inner child with the same tenderness. Of course, this doesn't mean ignoring responsibility. If we've hurt someone, compassion for ourselves also means making amends. But we can do that without drowning in shame. Shame says, "You are bad." Compassion says, "You made a mistake, and you can choose differently now." See the difference? One crushes, the other heals. Let's try a small reflection together. Think of one thing you've been hard on yourself for recently. Bring it gently to mind. Now ask, if someone I love made this mistake, what would I say to them? And then, say that to yourself. Out loud if you can. You might be surprised at the relief that comes from speaking kindly to yourself. Here's the beautiful part. When you learn to soften toward yourself, your heart naturally softens toward others. You stop expecting perfection from them because you no longer demand perfection from yourself. You begin to meet the world with more patience, more understanding. Compassion is like a ripple. It starts in the center, with you, and expands outward. Without that center, the ripple is hollow. So let me return to the question I asked at the beginning. Are you harsher on yourself than on anyone else? If the answer is yes, maybe today can be the day you start shifting that. Start small. Start with one kind word to yourself. Start with one breath of forgiveness. Because once you learn to love yourself, that love cannot help but spill into the world. And that is the foundation of true compassion. When the heart knows how to embrace itself, it naturally knows how to embrace all beings. So the next time you catch yourself judging or punishing yourself, pause. Ask, what if compassion begins right here, with me? And in our next step together, We'll explore how that self-love and compassion can ripple out, not just to those close to us, but to all beings, near and far. Because the circle of compassion, when truly alive, has no end. Compassion for all beings. Let me ask you something unusual. Do you believe a tiny ant can feel pain? Most of us don't think about it. We step on the sidewalk without noticing. We spray insects in the kitchen. We cut down trees. We waste water, all as if the rest of the world were just background scenery for our lives. But the truth is, life is everywhere. And life, in its own way, knows suffering and longing, just like us. When we talk about compassion, we often picture people, our family, our friends, maybe even strangers we pass on the street. But compassion, in its deepest form, does not stop with humanity. It stretches out, to animals, to plants, to the earth itself. Think about your dog, or your cat, if you have one. Notice how they flinch when they're scared, how they relax when you touch them with kindness. That same capacity to suffer and to feel comfort exists across so many beings, big and small. If a creature can suffer, it deserves compassion. The Buddha's teaching on compassion, what we call metta, is not just for people we like or understand. It's a way of seeing that every form of life matters. Every drop of existence is woven into the same fabric. And when one thread is pulled, the whole cloth shifts. I remember once watching a child by a pond. She leaned down, scooped up a struggling beetle from the water, and gently set it on the grass. For her, it was a tiny act, almost playful. But I thought, that beetle's entire life was saved in that moment. To the child, it was just a second of care. To the beetle, it was everything. Isn't that astonishing? That with one small choice, we can reduce suffering in the world, even if it's for a creature we barely notice. Compassion for all beings is not about being perfect. It's about awareness. It's about pausing to see the connections. When we choose not to kill an insect unnecessarily, when we recycle, when we take only what we need, we are practicing compassion. It may look ordinary, but it is profound. Modern science echoes this ancient truth. Ecologists tell us that when one species disappears, entire ecosystems can collapse. The bees that pollinate our food, the forests that give us oxygen, the oceans that regulate climate, our survival is intertwined with theirs. So when we protect them, we are not only practicing compassion, we are protecting ourselves too. But here's something deeper. Practicing compassion for all beings changes the way we see ourselves. Suddenly, we are no longer at the center of the universe. We are part of a vast, breathing web of life. That realization is both humbling and liberating. Let's take a simple daily example: food. Every time we eat, a life has been given, whether plant or animal, for us to continue living. When we pause to recognize that, gratitude arises. Eating mindfully becomes a practice of compassion, because we honor what was sacrificed, and we try not to waste it. Or water. Imagine this. The glass of water in your hand has traveled through rivers, clouds, oceans, and veins of the earth for billions of years. It has nourished dinosaurs, trees, birds, and people long before us. To waste it carelessly is to forget its sacred journey. To drink it mindfully, with gratitude, is an act of compassion. Some people hear this and think, it's too much. How can I care about every ant, every tree, every drop of water? But compassion is not about being overwhelmed. It is about intention. You don't need to save every creature. You simply need to live with the awareness that your choices matter. One less piece of plastic, one saved insect, one mindful breath in the forest. These things ripple. They may feel small, but compassion is built from small, consistent acts. And here's something beautiful. The more we practice compassion for all beings, the more peace we feel inside. Because every act of protection, every gentle choice, is a way of aligning with life instead of resisting it. So I want to leave you with a question. What would happen if you lived tomorrow with the quiet vow, may no being suffer because of me today? How would it change the way you walk, eat, speak, consume? Even if you only kept that vow partly, imagine the difference it would make. Compassion is not just a moral duty, it's a path to freedom. Because when our hearts open to all beings, resentment and violence within us begin to dissolve. We no longer live in conflict with the world, we live as part of it. And maybe that is the deepest liberation, to know that we are not separate, but connected. That to love the smallest creature is to honor the entire universe. So the next time you see an ant crossing the sidewalk, or a tree standing quietly by the road, pause. Ask yourself, What would it mean to meet this life with compassion? Because when compassion extends to all beings, it becomes more than a practice. It becomes the path of awakening itself. And in our next reflection, we'll take this one step further, into the realization that compassion, when lived fully, is not just an emotion. It is the very key to freedom. Compassion, the path to liberation. Let me ask you this. If there were only one door that could lead you out of suffering, would you walk through it? The Buddha taught that door is compassion. We often think of compassion as a kind of moral goodness, something kind people do, like helping the poor, feeding the hungry, or forgiving those who wrong them. And yes, that's part of it. But in the Buddhist tradition, compassion is not just a virtue. It is liberation itself. The Buddha once said, "Compassion and wisdom are like the two wings of a bird. With only one, you cannot fly." Think about that image. Compassion alone without wisdom can make us sentimental, overwhelmed by emotions. Wisdom alone without compassion can make us cold, detached, even arrogant. But when the two come together, heart and mind in harmony, that's when true freedom begins. I remember reading the story of a monk who, during a war, was captured and tortured. When asked later how he survived, he said, "The only thing I feared was losing my compassion for my captors." Imagine that. Even in the face of cruelty, his greatest concern wasn't his body, but his heart. He knew that if hatred entered, he would lose his freedom, even if he walked out alive. That's the power of compassion. It frees us, right in the middle of pain. Let's make this personal. How often do we feel trapped by anger, resentment, jealousy, or fear? These emotions can feel like cages we build around ourselves. Someone hurts us, and we replay it over and over, making the wound deeper. We chase desires, thinking they'll bring happiness, but they leave us restless. The more we cling, the heavier life feels. Now imagine replacing that grip with compassion. When someone insults you, instead of reacting with anger, you see their suffering and respond with understanding. Suddenly, the cage door opens. You're no longer a prisoner of their words. You are free. Compassion does not mean allowing injustice or ignoring harm. It doesn't mean being passive. Rather, it means acting from a place of clarity, not hatred. It means choosing to protect life without poisoning your own heart. That's why the Buddha called compassion the very essence of awakening. It transforms not only the world around us, but the world within us. Here's the paradox. The more we let go of self-centeredness, the lighter we become. The less we chase only our own gain, the more joy we discover. Compassion dissolves the walls of me versus you, mine versus yours. In that space of openness, suffering loses its grip. Think about it this way. Anger chains us to the past. Fear chains us to the future. But compassion anchors us in the present, where healing can actually happen. I once had a friend who went through a brutal divorce. For months, she carried bitterness like a stone in her chest. Then one day, during meditation, she whispered, "May he be free from suffering." She didn't mean she excused his mistakes. She didn't mean she wanted him back. But in that moment, she stopped carrying the stone. She told me later, it wasn't about him. It was about me. Compassion gave me back my life. Isn't that what we are all longing for? Not just to survive, but to live free, unburdened, light, at peace. Compassion is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength. It takes courage to love when it's easier to hate. It takes clarity to forgive when anger feels justified. It takes a free heart to wish well for others, even those who hurt us. But when we do, the chains fall away. And here's something science tells us. Studies show that when people practice compassion meditation, their stress levels drop, their hearts heal, their brains literally rewire toward greater empathy and calm. Compassion doesn't just heal the world, it heals our bodies and minds. So when the Buddha said compassion is liberation, he wasn't speaking poetically. He was pointing to a real, lived experience, the freedom we taste when we let our hearts expand beyond me and embrace we. Now I want you to imagine this, a bird with two wings, compassion and wisdom. With every breath of kindness, every act of understanding, every moment you choose love over hate, you are learning to fly. Not just above your own suffering, but into a life that is spacious, fearless, awake. So the next time you feel trapped in anger or weighed down by fear, pause. Place your hand on your heart and whisper, "May I be free. May they be free. May all beings be free." Notice how the cage begins to open. Because in the end, compassion is not just something we practice. It is who we truly are when all the noise falls away. It is the door. It is the path. It is freedom itself. And in our next journey together, we'll explore how compassion's twin, wisdom, guides us to see reality clearly, so we can walk this path with balance and grace. So stay with me. The wings are ready. Let's learn to fly.